Hi guys, hope you're all okay. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today for another video. This is another little discussion video on getting your amateur radio license. So this, obviously I'm a UK amateur radio operator, but this loosely applies to sort of amateur radio all over the world really. And I'm hoping it'll answer a lot of the questions I get asked in a lot of my videos about getting the amateur radio license. So this is all about what to do beforehand. So there's plenty of videos and websites on YouTube and on the internet of how to get your amateur radio license, what's involved in the test, things like that. But this is about in the run up to that, before that. So what do you need to do before you are going to get your amateur radio license? So for me, there's sort of 5 things that you need to think about. So the first one is to look at whether the hobby is right for you. Now, I asked that question because a lot of people, and people I know of, stuff that I see online, people go on, they get their amateur radio license, they go on, it's not what they thought it was going to be, and they never come on again. So I've heard plenty of M6s, M3s, they'll come on, yeah, I just got my license, you never hear them again, ever. They become inactive, and there's plenty of reasons for that, and what I find is beforehand they're really excited about getting the license, and then when they actually get the license and get on the air, amateur radio isn't what they thought it was going to be. So you need to look at what you want from the hobby. Amateur radio is regulated. It's not strictly regulated anymore in the way that Ofcom don't tend to do a lot about anything, but it's regulated in the fact that there is an etiquette, there's an understood etiquette for radio operation. We have call signs that we have to use. There are rules that we have to stick to, and a lot of good radio amateur operators out there stick to the rules as much as they can. And that sometimes puts people off. So then you've got to ask yourself the question, well, is CB something that would be more for you? If you want to go on, chat casually, back and forth with your mate, have a bit of a swear, a bit of a laugh, a bit of a mess about on the radio, run higher power, then CB might be something that would be more suited for you because it isn't regulated. You don't have to give call signs on there. It's more social in the fact that they can be back and forth and a bit of bad language and stuff like that. That sort of thing goes on. I'm not saying it's right, but that does happen, and there are still people on CB. So you just have to bear in mind that there is that level of etiquette, and a lot of people on the radio do talk about radio. Some people do talk about the more social side of things, but a lot of people tend to talk radio. So have a look at whether it's what you want. A lot of people come to the hobby and then they disappear, and some of that could be the reason why the hobby isn't what they thought it was going to be. And the best way to do that is to just have a listen first and see whether it's going to be right for you. Ask around on Facebook groups, do some research and find out whether the hobby is right for you. Okay, the second one is to do a bit of research around the bands. When people aren't used to radio, they're not yet fully immersed in the radio hobby and they're still learning, it can seem such a vast hobby. The bands can be confusing, so the first thing to know is know what your bands are. So know where VHF and UHF are, particularly 2 meters, 70 centimeters. Look at what those bands are used for. Look at where repeaters are, whether you may be in a location where simplex may not work for you, repeaters might be the best sort of thing. You might be in a position where HF is best for you. Look at where those bands are. Look at where certain frequencies are, and just get to know that sort of in your mind the map of where certain bands are. That will bring a lot of knowledge gaps together, and it'll make the hobby feel smaller. When you're not used to where all the bands are and where everything is, the hobby can just seem vast and it can be confusing. It was for me when I was first getting into radio, what everything means, where VHF is, what UHF is, where can you transmit. So just have a look at the bands first, have a listen round, look at where you feel maybe best suited for you. I personally prefer VHF and UHF. Some people may not be in a position where they can use VHF and UHF due to terrain, location, things like that. HF might be the option. So just sort of bear that in mind and get that in your head, and get that mapped out so it is clearer and easier for you to understand. The third one, which I've already alluded to, is have a listen in first. So buy a cheap radio, buy something like a Bofeng, buy a cheap radio scanner and have a listen round the bands. That will give you an idea of what operation is like, what amateur radio is like, how busy it can be in your area, what people talk about, what the attitudes of certain people are in your area, and it will just give you a bit more of an insight into the hobby. The best thing you can do is to listen first, and radio equipment is very, very cheap now. When I was first starting out, sort of 15, 16 years ago, there wasn't much in the way of Chinese handhelds in the UK, so it was quite expensive. I just used to listen in on a scanner, and you can buy scanners relatively cheap second hand if you don't want to buy anything new, so just have a listen in first. As I said in the first part of the video, a lot of people, they have a listen round and decide it isn't for them, and that will just save you from going through the trouble of taking your test, buying equipment, coming on the air and thinking, oh God, I've just made a mistake. So number 3, have a good listen round first and decide whether the hobby is right for you. Number 4, the fourth point to think about is, do you like tests? There is a test in order to pass the foundation license. It is really, really easy, but some people don't like tests. Some people struggle with tests, and while they may have the relevant knowledge and information to, to be able to pass the test, they can't always put that across when they're being tested. So just think about that. It's a very, very easy test. Kids pass it. It is multiple choice, and you don't have to get 100% pass rate anyway. But just have a think about whether you want to go through the trouble of taking a test. There's a small cost involved in that, but as I say, it is easy. But just look at that. Sometimes it can put people off. There are mock papers that you can do online. You can buy the Foundation Now book, and there's other books as well which tell you everything you need to know on the test, and everything in the test is what you'll have already been taught. So it'll usually happen over a weekend or on the evenings. Everything that's in that test you'll be taught, so it's very, very easy. But just think about whether a test sort of environment is right for you. And then lastly, the final step, if you've done all the other steps that I've sort of talked about, is to contact a radio club. This will give you more of an insight into the hobby, and they usually let you visit a couple of times for free anyway. There's usually subs for regular attendees of a radio club, but they usually let you attend for free. So I visited the South Manchester Radio Club in 2003, and they let me go for 3 or 4 times just to sort of get a feel of it. I met a lot of radio amateurs there. They spoke to me about radio amateur operation, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what I needed to know, things like that, and that'll just give you more of an insight, and you'll walk away from there thinking either, yeah, I really want to do it, or no, I don't. And other than getting to know people at the club, they can put you in the right direction of where and when to do the test. So a lot of clubs do the tests for the foundation license, so they can give you dates when it's going to be done, and they can provide you with everything you need to be able to do it. Or they can put you in touch with another club that does the test if they don't, and they can put you in the right direction as well. So yeah, that's sort of the last thing, is just to visit a club. And if you go a couple of times, you realise it's not for you and you never go back, it doesn't really matter, you haven't lost out. But that'll give you as much insight into the hobby as you can possibly get. So I hope that helped, guys. To radio amateur operators that are watching this, you've already done it, so it's probably irrelevant to you. But there's a lot of people on this channel that view videos that aren't yet licensed amateurs, that are just starting out in radio, that haven't really got a clue what radio is all about, where certain bands are, where you can operate, where you can't, what a repeater is, how to go about getting your test, what does the test involve, things like that. So I just hope that cleared things up for you. You've got to look at whether the hobby is right for you, and that will save you from getting your test, going on once and thinking, what have I done? I've just made a mistake, and it wastes your time and your money. So yeah, just bear those points in mind, and it's just all about doing a little bit of research first to see whether the hobby is going to be right for you. And I'm sure if you research it and follow the steps that I've told you there, you'll have a bit more of an insight, and I'm sure it'll sort of clear up any worries you have and make you realise that the hobby is probably right for you anyway. Okay, so if you have any comments, suggestions or questions, or there's any amateur radio operators out there that think I may have missed something, then drop it in the box below. We'll have a discussion on it. It's always good to get some ideas and thoughts together. And for those who are looking at getting your radio license, then look at the comments below and see what people are saying. They pick up on stuff that I may have missed. So yeah, if you are thinking of getting your license, I'm sure you won't look back, so go for it. And we'll catch you in the next one, guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and we'll catch you further down. 7-3 for now. Cheers.